66, 66, 66, over and over and over again, which to me...
He was only 29, yet he carried the weight of centuries in his chest. To the world, Tyler Henry was the boy who could hear what no living ear should hear, the whispers of the departed, the echoes of unfinished love, the soft tremor of a last goodbye. Millions watched him breathe comfort into grieving hearts, watched him sit in rooms filled with celebrities and strangers alike, offering messages from a world no camera could capture. But beneath the quiet smile and steady voice lived a story few ever dared to imagine. A childhood carved by isolation, a body marked by fragility, a soul stretched thin between two realms he never asked to walk. Before fame crowned him the Hollywood medium, before Netflix followed him across America, before the world queued for a chance to have their pain interpreted, there was a boy who predicted his grandmother's death at 10 years old, and in doing so, stepped into a darkness he did not yet understand. Every revelation he offered others came at a cost. Every reading pulled him deeper into an unseen landscape that drained him more than anyone knew. Behind closed doors were the seizures, the collapsing lungs, the emergency surgeries, the quiet nights where he wondered whether the spirits he comforted were slowly consuming him. People called his ability a blessing, but he knew the truth. Blessings can fracture a life just as easily as curses. And so the question that haunts his story is not whether Tyler Henry can speak to the dead. It is far more devastating. What happens when the gift that brings hope to millions begins to break the one who carries it? He was born in California's San Joaquin Valley, a place where the days were long, the faith was strict, and the community moved like a single guarded heartbeat. In that quiet farmland world, life was supposed to be simple. Sunday sermons, small-town routines, neighbors who knew every detail of your family line. But nothing about Tyler Henry's childhood would ever be simple, because from the very beginning, the unseen world tugged at him with invisible hands. At 10 years old, while other children still lived inside the safety of cartoons and playground arguments, Tyler felt a presence he did not have a name for. It came quietly, like a shadow slipping beneath a locked door. One afternoon, he looked at his grandmother, alive, smiling, unaware, and felt a sudden, wordless certainty that her time was nearly gone. The knowledge frightened him. It didn't belong to the logic of a child. It didn't belong to any logic at all. When news of her passing arrived, he felt the ground tilt beneath him. There was no celebration of a gift, no awe, only confusion, raw, heavy, and terrifying. His young mind scrambled to understand why he knew something he shouldn't have known, why he felt something no one around him felt, and why the truth, when it arrived, hurt so much more than ignorance ever could. That moment cracked open a door that could never again be closed. From that day on, feelings and impressions seeped into his world like light leaking through torn curtains, messages without words, sensations without form, a faint sense of presence in empty rooms. It was an awakening, but not a graceful one. It was a force he could not turn away from, a realm that insisted on being heard before he was ready to listen. But in San Joaquin Valley, being different came with a price. His peers saw oddness where he saw confusion. Teachers saw distraction where he saw overwhelm. And the religious environment around him saw danger in the very abilities he was trying to hide. Whispers spread, eyes lingered too long. He was the boy who felt strange things, the boy whose reactions didn't make sense, the boy whose emotions came from places nobody else could see. The children in his neighborhood avoided what they couldn't understand. The adults avoided what they feared. In that small-town echo chamber, loneliness grew into a constant companion. Middle school only tightened the walls around him. The bullying wasn't always loud, but it was sharp. He wasn't shoved or cornered. He was ignored, dismissed, quietly pushed to the outer rings of every social circle. The silence was worse than cruelty. It told him he existed outside the boundaries of normal childhood, outside the rhythms that kept other kids connected. High school brought no relief. If anything, it deepened the isolation. He walked through hallways carrying an invisible weight, pulled between worlds, one he could see and one he couldn't escape. Meanwhile, the religious voices around him argued about what his abilities meant. To some, he was touched by something sacred. To others, he was flirting with darkness. For a teenager desperate to belong, that contradiction was unbearable. He questioned everything. Was this ability a curse? Was he broken? Was he meant to carry this alone? But the most painful truth was this: no one else could hear what he heard. No one else could feel what he felt. And no one could guide him through the maze forming inside his own mind. The early experiences that could have been wondrous instead filled him with a solitude deeper than most adults ever face. And yet, in that solitude, seeds were planted. Seeds of empathy, heightened sensitivity, and unshakable intuition. He would one day use them to comfort the world. But as a child, those seeds felt more like thorns. By the time he reached young adulthood, Tyler Henry had already lived a secret life unseen by everyone around him. A life shaped by confusion, burdened by fear, and marked by the unmistakable truth that he would never walk the same path as anyone else his age. He didn't know it yet, but the same ability that isolated him would one day be the reason millions sought him out. The pain of being different would evolve into the gift of understanding others, and the loneliness that haunted his childhood would soon collide with a new force: fame. He entered adulthood with a strange kind of dual existence. One foot anchored to ordinary life, the other pulled gently, relentlessly into a realm no one else could see. For years, Tyler tried to live as others did, to quiet the current that surged beneath his thoughts. But the truth hummed inside him like an engine that would not stall. He could never fully turn his ability off. At best, he could only soften it, tuning the frequencies of the other world the same way one adjusts the volume of a distant radio. That subtle hum shaped everything. When people walked past him, he felt histories trailing behind them. When someone sat across from him, he sensed a weight that was not entirely theirs. And with each whisper from the unseen, his path veered further from normalcy and deeper into purpose. He didn't chase fame, he chased clarity. What began as quiet readings for friends soon grew into something larger. Word spread. There was a young man who could touch the edge of grief and return with something gentle, something healing. His calm presence soothed those who entered a reading with trembling hands and left with tears of release. There was no theatrics, no incantations, no spectacle, only stillness and truth delivered in a voice that seemed to understand the architecture of loss. People started coming from nearby towns, then from farther away, then from across states. The small, fragile boy who grew up fearing his own abilities now found that strangers sought him because of them. Empathy became his language, and intuition became his compass. Each reading deepened his conviction that what had once been a burden could become a bridge, connecting the grieving with the love they thought they had lost forever. Hollywood noticed. Producers didn't see a medium, they saw a phenomenon. a soft-spoken 20-something with a disarming innocence, a sensitivity rare in a world of bright lights and large egos. When they placed a camera in front of him, something extraordinary happened. Not for Tyler, but for the people sitting across from him. He didn't perform. He transformed grief into connection, confusion into calm, sorrow into something bearable. The pilot for Hollywood Medium with Tyler Henry opened the gates. Suddenly, he was reading for celebrities whose faces were recognized in every home. They arrived guarded, skeptical, wrapped in layers of media training. But within minutes, their voices cracked, their shoulders loosened, their long-buried memories spilled out. Tyler didn't just tell them what they wanted to hear. He told them what they needed to carry forward. It wasn't fame. It was resonance. Millions tuned in each week, mesmerized by the contrast, a gentle young man delivering messages that shook people to their core. The world had seen psychics before, but never like this. Not with such sincerity, not with such vulnerability, not with such complete absence of ego. Then came Life After Death with Tyler Henry on Netflix. A national waiting list of more than 300,000 people. A cultural conversation he didn't intend to start. Spirituality, once whispered about, was suddenly mainstream again. Tyler had risen, not through ambition, but through inevitability. The boy who once hid from the shadows now stood in the spotlight, illuminating the darkest corners of grief for people who didn't know where else to turn. Yet even as he ascended, even as the world embraced him, a quiet ache lingered beneath the surface. Because every message he delivered came with a silent reminder. To guide others through their pain, he had to carry a piece of it himself. And the higher he climbed, the more the weight pressed on him. Fame would not ease that burden. It would magnify it. And soon the world that lifted him up would become the very force that pushed him toward his deepest tragedies. Fame did not strike Tyler Henry like lightning. It unfolded around him like a widening halo. One moment, he was reading quietly for small groups. The next, he found himself seated across from household names, actors, singers, icons, whose lives were measured in headlines and applause. Yet, when they sat with Tyler, the noise of their fame evaporated. They became simply human again, raw and trembling before the memories he brought forward. Hollywood Medium turned him into something unexpected. Not a celebrity, but a vessel, a bridge, a mirror for the sorrow people carried but didn't know how to name. With each televised reading, millions watched Tyler close his eyes and breathe deeply, as if listening for something beyond the reach of sound. And then the shift, an atmosphere thickening, a presence forming, a truth rising to the surface. Celebrities who had mastered the art of composure found themselves unraveling under the weight of emotions they thought were buried. Tears spilled, voices cracked, and the world leaned closer to the screen. Tyler didn't dazzle, he disarmed. He didn't perform, he revealed. Viewers saw him as purity in a city defined by illusion. His sincerity cut through Hollywood's neon haze, reminding people that beneath the glamour, every soul, famous or nameless, craves closure, forgiveness, and one last message from someone they loved. Soon, his waiting list stretched into the hundreds of thousands. News outlets called him the medium of a generation, a cultural phenomenon, a spiritual compass for an age drifting between skepticism and longing. When Netflix introduced Life After Death with Tyler Henry, his story expanded far beyond celebrity readings. It showed him driving from town to town, meeting ordinary families, uncovering secrets that had shaped lifetimes. The camera followed him into the intimate corners of grief, and viewers realized something profound. Tyler wasn't just connecting with the dead, he was helping the living make sense of their own stories. The series also revealed the parallel journey of his mother, exploring the shocking truth of her origins. It wasn't just a show about messages from the afterlife, it was a documentary about identity, inheritance, trauma, and healing. Millions tuned in not out of fascination with the supernatural, but because they recognized their own wounds reflected in the people Tyler helped. He became a symbol, and symbols carry expectations. People expected him to be calm, centered, and endlessly giving. They forgot that he was only in his 20s, still shaping his own understanding of life and death while being asked to carry the weight of countless heartbreaks every day. Fame made his gift louder, sharper, more demanding. There was no privacy, no pause, no escape from the emotional storms he walked into. The paradox tightened around him. The more people he helped, the more drained he became. The more admired he was, the lonelier he felt. The more his name rose, the more his body broke beneath the pressure. But the audiences didn't see the tremors in his hands after a long reading. They didn't see the exhaustion behind his soft smile. They didn't see the nights he lay awake wondering if he was meant to live forever as an instrument for everyone's grief but his own. Fame gave Tyler a platform, a purpose, and a place in the cultural imagination, but it also magnified the cracks forming beneath the surface, cracks that would soon break open, exposing the tragedies he had carried in silence. Because behind every highly produced episode, behind every emotional breakthrough on screen, there was a hidden truth waiting in the wings. You cannot walk others through darkness without being touched by the shadows yourself. And for Tyler, those shadows were already gathering. The world saw a young man guiding others through their grief with grace and serenity. But what the world never saw, not on television, not on Netflix, not in any interview, was the silent war Tyler Henry fought inside his own body and mind. Before the fame, before the crowds, before the endless requests for readings, tragedy had already laid its claim on him. It began the moment he entered the world. He was born 3 months premature, a fragile infant whose first breath was a borrowed miracle. Doctors whispered predictions of complications, and those predictions would echo through his youth like distant thunder. His body carried the memory of that early struggle, a vulnerability woven into every beat of his heart. At 18, the storm finally arrived. A sudden headache, a collapse, a terrifying rush to the hospital. Doctors discovered an arachnoid brain cyst blocking the flow of cerebrospinal fluid, causing pressure to rise dangerously inside his skull. Hydrocephalus, a word that could have been the end of his story. Emergency brain surgery saved him, but the experience left him standing on the edge of existence, aware of how thin the line between life and death was. It would not be the last time he stood there. Years later, another cyst, this time a colloid cyst, near the center of his brain, forced him back into the operating room. When he updated fans in 2025, he did so with the softness of someone who had danced with mortality before. "Not my first rodeo," he said. But underneath the humor was truth. His body had become a battlefield, and survival was never guaranteed. Then came the lungs. In late 2019, just before the world was swallowed by the pandemic, Tyler's lung collapsed without warning. Pain carved through him as doctors rushed to save the air slipping from his body. A 3-week hospital stay revealed multiple air leaks, severe lung damage he believes began when he and his family suffered a mysterious illness, likely an early wave of COVID, months before the virus was named. Breathing, the simplest human act, became a fragile privilege. Every inhale hurt, every movement felt uncertain. He lived not as a man haunted by spirits, but as a man haunted by the fragility of his own life. Yet physical suffering was only half of his tragedy. The emotional wounds cut even deeper. One of the greatest heartbreaks of Tyler's life came wrapped in the gentlest memory. Terry, his first love, the person who understood him when others couldn't. But Tyler sensed Terry's fate long before any doctor spoke the words. The visions, the feelings, the weight of knowing what would come, it crushed him. And in fear of losing someone he loved, he did the only thing his trembling heart could manage. He pulled away. Terry died of brain cancer, and the boy who could comfort strangers could not forgive himself. It haunted him in quiet moments, in dreams, in the stillness between readings. The grief was sharper than any message he delivered to others. He could speak with the dead, but he could not speak with the one he wished he could have saved. And then there was the pain of identity. Coming out was not a single moment of truth. It was 20 moments, 20 conversations, 20 times he had to explain, defend, repeat, insist, because even those closest to him struggled to accept what he had known for years. The world saw him as a beacon of spiritual clarity, but inside, he was a young man trying desperately to claim his own truth in a world ready to judge every part of him. Then came the critics. Reddit threads dissected him with surgical coldness. Skeptical Inquirer called him a fraud. Headlines accused him of exploiting grief, manipulating emotions, staging readings. He read the words, every one of them, and no matter how calm he appeared in interviews, the accusations scraped against the most tender parts of him. Fame had put him under a microscope, and every doubt, every insult, every attempt to dismantle his integrity left marks no camera could capture. His gift connected him to the dead, but it also exposed him to the judgment of the living. Day after day, he sat with the grieving, absorbing their pain like a sponge that never dried. He carried their heartbreak in his chest long after the camera stopped recording. He walked with their memories, their regrets, their last conversations. And though he gave them closure, he rarely found closure for himself. Tyler Henry, the medium of Hollywood, had become a vessel for everyone's sorrow. And vessels, when filled too often, begin to crack. The cracks were forming, small at first, then deeper, then unignorable. Because the tragedy of Tyler Henry is not simply what he endured. It is the quiet realization that while he guided millions toward healing, he struggled to find the path for himself. For years, people believed Tyler Henry could sense anything, past, present, or beyond. They believed nothing could hide from him, that the veil separating the living and the dead parted effortlessly at his touch. But there was one truth, one shadow, one secret so close to home that even Tyler could not feel it coming. It began with a question no one expected to ask. Who was his mother's real mother? During the filming of Life After Death, a DNA test unraveled a mystery buried beneath decades of silence. The woman who raised Tyler's mother, the grandmother he'd known, the woman woven into the fabric of his family, was not related to them at all. She was a stranger. Not just a stranger, but a convicted murderer serving multiple life sentences for crimes too horrific to comprehend. The revelation struck like a lightning bolt. Tyler, who could feel the presence of strangers' loved ones with uncanny clarity, had never once sensed anything from the woman who raised his mother. He had never felt that familiar warmth, that whisper of lineage, that thread of blood connecting two souls. Instead, there had always been an emptiness, one he assumed was his own failing, not the truth waiting in the shadows. Now he understood why. The woman who called herself his grandmother was not family. She had never been. And the real grandmother, the woman whose shapes shaped his existence, was someone he had never met, never felt, never connected with. A ghost without a trace. The irony was brutal. He could locate the spirits of strangers within minutes, yet he could not find the spirit of the woman whose blood flowed through his veins. He had brought closure to thousands, but he could not solve the mystery buried in his own family tree. He had read the grief of others with surgical precision, yet his own history had been a locked room with no windows. For the first time, Tyler was forced to confront a possibility he had never dared to consider. If his gift could not guide him to his own origins, what else had it missed? How much of his life was shaped by truths hidden in plain sight? And what did it mean to walk between worlds without being able to see into his own? The discovery shook him deeper than any surgery, any collapse, any critic's accusation. It dismantled the narrative he thought he understood about himself. It forced him to face the reality that even those who connect to the unseen can be blind to the shadows living closest to them. But in that darkness, something else emerged, a raw, unexpected empathy. Tyler realized that the families he comforted weren't just grieving the dead, they were grieving truths they never had the chance to learn, conversations they never had the chance to finish, secrets that twisted through generations like unhealed wounds. He now understood, intimately, what it meant to be shaped by the unknown. The revelation also deepened the quiet ache he carried. His ability was not infallible. It was not a guarantee of clarity or protection. It was a fragile, complex connection that offered glimpses, not absolutes. And that vulnerability, that admission of not knowing, made him more human than the world had ever allowed him to be. As the cameras rolled, Tyler did not hide the shock. He didn't shield himself with mystique or performance. He allowed the world to witness his confusion, his grief, his disorientation. For once, he wasn't the medium decoding grief. He was the son trying to understand his own fractured inheritance. The hidden truth had surfaced, and it carried a message louder than any whisper from the other side. Even those who walk between worlds are not immune to the darkness in their own. In the end, Tyler Henry stands not as a myth, not as a miracle, but as a young man who has carried far more than anyone his age should. He has walked through hospital corridors with tubes in his chest. He has sat in rooms where silence felt heavier than breath. He has learned that knowing the dead does not spare you from the pain of the living, and seeing the unseen offers no shield against the wounds carved by truth. Yet through every collapse, every accusation, every secret unearthed, he has continued to rise. Not because he is fearless, but because he refuses to turn away from the suffering of others. His gift has never made him invincible. It has made him vulnerable in ways the world will never fully grasp. At 29, he is a bridge between worlds, but also a reminder that even the strongest bridges can tremble beneath their own weight. He comforts millions, yet still searches for a place where his own heart can rest. He reads messages from the afterlife, yet still wrestles with the silence surrounding his past. Tyler Henry's story is not one of supernatural certainty. It is a story of resilience, a story of a young man learning to live with the echoes only he can hear. A story of a soul shaped by both light and shadow, carrying forward despite the fractures no camera ever captures. If his journey moved you, let it be honored. Share your thoughts, your empathy, your voice. because even those who guide others through darkness deserve to know they are not walking alone.